So while riding in Cuddyback this weekend, Christmas weekend, my bike shut itself off and then would not start. And I was not sure if this has something to do with the bottom end or if this has something to do with the clutch. So basically what I'm doing right now is I just drained my oil and I'm going to put a magnet into the oil. The oil, I collected it into a Pyrex dish so I could see the bottom, but I'm gonna put this magnet down in the bottom and we're gonna see if any pieces of metal come out of the oil. So I'm gonna kind of swirl it around a little bit. There is a large magnet down below, but I wanna know if just kind of frothing it around, if it's gonna pick up anything. When the oil drained, it hit this magnet down there that was in the bowl. So far, I'm not seeing any solid pieces. So let's take this piece of magnet out. And this is gonna be a really good indicator on if there's anything in my motor that basically broke apart. So the magnet is going to pick up all of the steel parts of the motor and it's going to get stuck to the magnet. So all of the aluminum is not magnetic. So that means it will not stick to the magnet. And so far I'm actually really happy because I don't see any large metal particles here. And they would be like huge chunks. And this is only minimal small pieces here. So this is the reason why I chose the clear dish. So I drained my motor oil into it. Even using the magnet, it saw very minimal pieces, but I drained the majority of the oil out, being sure to leave the particles in the bottom. So basically, I'm gonna shine a flashlight and you can see some of the little shiny sparklies in here. So the shiny sparklies is going to be aluminum because nothing was picked up on the magnet. So I am feeling really positive about this right now because I don't see anything large and I don't see anything that's getting picked up from the magnet. So I'm happy about that. But my next step is going to be, since the oil is out, I'm basically going to take the clutch cover off and disassemble the clutch and see if maybe something happened in the clutch. I'm also going to take out the oil screen like I did the other day, and I'm going to see if anything got caught in there. But so far, I'm really happy that I didn't see any big chunks of metal. These are some of the steps that you can take to diagnose what's internally going on in your engine without taking your engine out or paying someone to basically tear your motor out, or tearing it apart, doing the top end. So these are ways that you can inspect your motor without having to go that avenue. So some preventative maintenance, you can do this regularly with your oil filter. You can cut it apart and see what's inside. Okay, ladies, so I inspected the clutch and there was no heavy particles or nothing was bound up in the clutch, which is another indicator that something else is going on. So from there, I went to electrical. I have a video that's going to come up next of me trying to start it and it didn't want to start. So I'm thinking that maybe it's electrical. So what I do between this video and the next is I'm going to put the charger, trickle charger on the battery and let it sit overnight, at least 12 to 24 hours, and you'd be surprised what happens. So that last video of the bike starting up is basically telling me that it could be an exhaust valve because it doesn't sound normal. So an exhaust valve could be stuck, which leads me to think that there's something going on in the top end because we didn't see any heavy particles in the oil screen, the clutch, or any of the oil that came out of the bike didn't have any heavy metal didn't have any heavy metal particles. I'm gonna pull my motor out, and he suggested that since I have 160 hours on my motor, which is about the time and it should be pulled and inspected internally, so I'm gonna take it out and I'm gonna bring it down to him for him to crack the case and basically do a once over on the whole motor, just to make sure that everything is, none of the bearings are worn out, replace all the seals, and anything, all of the trivial things that need to be replaced are replaced, but then making sure that everything is in tolerance. Stay tuned for more. This is me removing my motor so I can take it down to Mad Jack Racing for a complete overhaul. So after I took my motor out of my bike, I took it to Mad Jack Racing, Jack Moore. He's great. He's very communicative and awesome to deal with. So when I took my motor out, I brought it to him. He went through the motor, the top end first. So what he saw immediately was the exhaust cam melted the head. So what happened was it was starved of oil. When it was starved of oil, it got too hot. So it melted the aluminum. And I'll have some slides here in a second. This is a photo of the exhaust cam. And between the two lobes there is where you can see that it's melted to the head. This is the exhaust cam seat on the head where you can clearly see the damage from oil starvation. High temperature and no lubrication melted the aluminum and caused significant damage to the exhaust valves. On the piston, you can see where the valves elongated from the high temp and tapped the top of the piston. This is my cylinder where you can see minimal damage that can be corrected with honing. So I had him dig a little bit deeper, and when he dug deeper, when he took the bottom end apart, basically he cracked the case on the bottom end, he found that the oil pump failed. So what happens is the oil pump from the bottom of the motor, it pumps oil up through chambers to the top of the cam. So the top of the cam is what melted, and that is in the head. So I have some photos to show you. Here's my trickle oil pump that pushes oil up to the head through channels in the engine case. You can see that a tooth has broken off. Make sure that you're changing your oil. And I don't know if the oil caused this. This could be just a manufacturer thing that happens. I mean, I have 160 hours on my bike, which is quite a lot. So things happen at 160 hours. Top ends, you know, crazy things happen. So be on top of your maintenance is the big point here. So write down the hours between oil changes, oil filter changes. Change your oil or your air filter all the time. Do not let any nasty stuff in your oil. Even if it was dirty oil or particulates inside of the oil that got and caused the failure, still keep up on your maintenance. Keep a log of it. Make sure you're tracking it so you understand when you're changing the oil. If you're changing it every 10 hours, maybe change that to every 5 to 7 hours. So there's things that you can do to negate these kinds of problems, but eventually, after a certain amount of time, you will have to do hard maintenance. Usually that's the crankshaft, the top end, so that the piston rings, the valves, exhaust and intake valves, those will have to be replaced because they stretch out over time. And in the photos I have up there, you can see where the valves are actually hitting the piston. So it's important to make sure you stay on top of this stuff because bad things happen. Honestly, every 150 hours you should be taking your motor out, taking it to a shop, or taking your bike to a shop to have them do these things. Checking the tolerances of the cylinder, of checking the valves, making sure that everything's in tolerance. And when I say in tolerance, I mean that they meet the spec or specification of the service manual. So the service manual has all this information listed. So it's funny because Yamaha lists that you have to do X, Y, and Z every 25 hours, 40 hours. Not necessarily you have to follow those numbers to a T depending on your riding, but it's good to have an idea where the log comes from of how many hours you're putting on your bike, the riding that you're doing. So if you're going really fast, or if you're riding at an expert pro level, you're going to want to do these maintenance things a lot more frequently than a beginner who is not riding as hard on the motor as a pro or an expert. So understanding the differences between riding skill, and how that relates to maintenance is really important. So if you're a beginner and you're only riding maybe every 2 weeks for, let's say, 3-4 hours every 2 weeks, but you're really not pushing the bike to the limit, you can let it go a little bit farther. You don't need to do things as frequently as, let's say, an expert or a pro who are pushing the bike to the extreme. They're on the rev limiter, they're pushing it, they're hard on the motor, they're hard on the suspension. That stuff has to be maintained way more frequently than a beginner. So these are some really important things to keep in mind when you're buying a bike, or when you're learning how to ride, or even if you're an expert and let's say you're just kind of winging it, right? It's good to know these things. And even if you're learning something here, I'd say that's a win, right? So keeping on top of your maintenance log is going to be really important here. And I need to do that more. This is a learning lesson for me, to stay on top of it. Don't let things go. Replace things when they need to be replaced. Don't push it as far as the bike will go, because eventually the mechanical part of the motor will fail. So the failure is what costs a lot of money. So stay on top of it and keep track of the maintenance that you do.